Let us pray. Almighty God, Lord of all righteousness and truth, we pray as we gather here this evening that you will bless and guide the deliberations of this council meeting, that all members may work together for the prosperity of Horsham District, and putting aside all personal interest or unworthy ideals, they may keep in mind their responsibility to seek the good of all whom they represent. And as we gather on this, the third anniversary of Russia's invasion of Ukraine, as we remember the ongoing war in that region, the fragile peace in Gaza and Israel, and all places where there is conflict and unrest, so we pray for all world leaders and those with the power and influence to change things for the better. Heavenly Father, we come before you today with a heart of prayer for our world's leaders. We ask that you give them wisdom and discernment as they make decisions that affect the lives of so many people. We pray that you would give them a heart for justice and righteousness, and that they would seek to bring peace and prosperity to the nations they lead. We pray that you will give them the strength and courage to stand firm in their convictions and to lead with good judgment and integrity. Lord, we ask that you use our world leaders and all those with power and influence to bring about positive change in the world, and that they would be a source of hope and encouragement to those around them. Amen.
I have some housekeeping announcements. Please note the location of the fire exits. Please make sure that your mobile phones and other devices are switched to silent. The meeting is being live streamed and an audio recording being made. Please switch your microphone on when addressing the council and off when you have finished speaking. In relation to all points of order, members will need to indicate first the rule and second the way in which it has been broken, as is required by the Constitution. This will enable me to rule accordingly. Please can I remind members to talk to the point, and Cabinet members to ensure that their announcements are just that. As this is likely to be a long meeting, we will have a comfort break at various intervals. Also, can I please remind members to behave in a professional and respectful manner at all times. If members do behave inappropriately, I will ask them to stop speaking immediately. Persistent, poor and unprofessional conduct will lead to your expulsion from the room. I'm taking the liberty to separate out votes this evening to allow greater member participation. Therefore, please be patient and bear with us. To clarify, throughout this meeting, I will prompt those members with interests to leave the room at the appropriate time. And I know there will be many members popping up and down through the evening, so please be punctual. Please note that we will also have several recorded votes this evening, as the law obliges us to do so in respect of any decision related to the budget and the setting of the council tax. This extends to any amendments too. I now move on to item 1, apologies for absence. We have had multiple apologies for absence this evening from Councillor Emma Beard, Councillor John Campbell, Councillor Paul Clark, Councillor Casey Greenwood, Councillor Warwick Halliwell, Councillor Alex Jeffrey, Councillor Alan Manton, Councillor Roger Knoll, Councillor Josh Potts and Councillor Tricia Utan. I will now ask you to move to item 2 on pages 5 to 22, the minutes from the previous meeting. I move that the minutes of the meeting held on the 11th of December be approved as a correct record. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Beavis. Does anybody wish to make any comments on the accuracy of the minutes? Okay, are you all agreed that I may sign the minutes as a correct record? Thank you. I now move to item 3 to receive any declarations of interest from members. Do any... Thank you, Councillor Vickers. Do any members have any interest to declare in respect of any item on tonight's agenda?
Thank you, Chairman. I have two declarations of interest. The first one is on item 9, the report from the remuneration panel. I know one of the panel members, Cinzia D'Amico, as we both sit on the passenger advisory group of GATCOM. And my second interest is in item 10, because I sit on Southwater Parish Council with Councillor Graham Watkins, so I'm declaring an interest in that one as well.
Thank you so much, Councillor Vickers. Sorry, yes, thank you, Councillor Lambert.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, I need to declare that I'm a trustee of Community Transport Sussex and We Fund.
Thank you so much. Councillor Fisher.
I need to declare an interest in item 8, as I am a co-occupant of a second home and a director of a company that owns second homes.
Thank you. Councillor Fletcher.
Thank you very much. I'd like to declare an interest in item 6, recommendation 8 and item 8, both referring to the special charge because I am on the steering group of Blueprint and a member of Den Neighbourhood Council.
Thank you, Councillor Fletcher. Councillor Olsen.
Thank you, Chairman. I'd like to declare an interest regarding item 9, the report on the Independent Remuneration Panel. As one of the members is a close acquaintance and former colleague, I'll be excusing myself from the vote on recommendation 4 regarding the honorarium.
Thank you. Do we have it? Thank you, Councillor Perry.
I'd like to declare an interest in CT Sussex because I'm part of Henfield Communities car club linked to them, and also Henfield Community Partnership, which means anything about grants for voluntary groups and community partnerships I won't take part in.
Thank you so much, Councillor Perry. I now move to section 4, announcements. I have 3 announcements this evening. Firstly, earlier today I raised the flag, the Ukrainian flag at Parkside, and at 5 p.m. this evening Councillor Sam Raby and I met with 60 glorious local Ukrainian residents at the capital. It was an extremely moving experience. Talking to people who have lost everything really puts everything into perspective. In the last 3 years since the Russians' illegal invasion of Ukraine, over 12,000 people have died and there have been 30,000 casualties. In December, we all demonstrated the Council's commitment to support those suffering from this terrible war by passing a resolution to look at means of providing more support, such as through twinning opportunities. These are now being taken forward by Councillor Raby and by officers. It's more important than ever that we stand up to Russian imperialism and to those that would appease the actions in the Ukraine. As part of the commemoration last year of the establishment of Horsham District Council, we held a council meeting in Storrington at Chanctonbury Leisure Centre. At that time, I was asked to look into holding further council meetings in the southern part of the district. I'm very pleased to let you know that on the 4th of June, the council meeting will be held in Henfield Hall. This provides a better opportunity for the residents in the southern part of the district to attend council meetings and to ask questions. I am most grateful to Democratic Services and our IT team for their help in making this happen. Thirdly, and very sadly, the passing of our dear friend, Councillor Liz Kitchen, who passed away at the Royal Marsden Hospital earlier this month. Liz has served the community of Horsham as a district councillor for 38 years, since 1978. 1987, thank you. She was leader between 2001 and 2009 and chairman in 2000. She was also a West Sussex County Councillor. I only knew Liz for a short period, but I will remember her most for her kindness to me as both a newbie councillor in 2023 and more recently as chairman. She had a wonderful, soft voice, but I always knew to listen that more attentively whenever she spoke. She will be missed by so many people in this chamber and across our district. May I ask all members to stand and bow your heads as we hold 1 minute silence in her memory. Thank you. You may be seated. I now ask Leader of the Council, Martin Boffey, to make the first personal tribute to Councillor Liz Kitchen.
Thank you, Chairman. I shall take inspiration, firstly, from Councillor Kitchen and not say too much, because that was one of the things she often said. Politely, I'll say that because there will be people speaking who knew her a lot better than I did. To think that by the time I joined the council, she'd already been on it for 34 years is daunting, to say the least. I was grateful to her for continuing in her role as our representative at GATCOM, and I also know that other councillors, but also officers as well, had a great amount of respect for her experience in that field and the work that she did there. And I'll always remember her coming over to me at the annual meeting after I'd been appointed leader, and she said to me, "Thank you very much for letting me continue to do that." I said, "Well, we're the lucky ones here." And she said, she also said, "Well, I shall report to you on this regularly, and as for the rest, you don't have to worry about me. I won't be any trouble." You know, not that she was, but it would always be perfectly helpful to have trouble from Liz, because it would be worth listening to. I also note that, but yes, that she was the first leader of the district council when we moved from the committee system to the leader in cabinet system, and I dare say that we all owe quite a lot to her for the way she sort of established and bedded in that role at the council. Obviously, I didn't experience it myself, but to all intents and purposes, I believe she carried that out admirably, and again, for 8 years. I mean, that's not a problem I'm going to have, but even if I did, it's that in itself is quite a daunting prospect as well. The last things I'll just say is that, you know, many of her attributes are ones I aspire to in a leadership role. Although I may have already broken one of them by now, we should say. I don't think she loved the sound of her voice too much, her own voice too much, and that's always good in this role. And also qualities like having a sense of certain things. She had a great sense of fairness, a great sense of duty, and possibly most important in a leader of a council, a great sense of humour.
Thank you, Councillor Boffey. Councillor Serkis.
Thank you very much, Chairman. I first met Liz when I was actually on another authority altogether. We came on a deputation from Reigate and Banstead Borough Council when I was the deputy leader there, because Liz, with her team, was going to tell us the ins and outs of the refurbishment of the town centre, which interested a lot of my colleagues there. And so that was my very first experience of meeting Liz. And it was quite clear that she was a considerable powerhouse. That was clear from that meeting. I had the privilege of being a member of her cabinet from 2007 when she gave me the poison chalice of parking charges. I think Mark can sympathise with that. And I also sat with her on the county council for a time. As I said in the local paper, she was a person of few words, but those words always seemed to be definitive. I mean, those of us who chair groups and committees, and I'm not talking now about the Conservative group, but we've all known the moment when we've thought, I wish we could move on to the next item. And Liz always gave us the opportunity to move on to the next item, because she would suddenly speak with those definitive words which really put the issue to bed. There was always a quality about what she said that legitimately and definitively brought the discussion to an end. And so it's whenever I've been chairing meetings and she has spoken, it's always been a pleasure, because I would know that very soon I would be able to move on to the next item on the agenda. Liz's passing has left a big hole in the group that I have the privilege to lead. She has left a big hole in this council, and she, perhaps most important of all, she has left a big hole in this district, and that's what we must, above all else, remember her for. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Serkis. Councillor Vickers.
Thank you, Chairman. As many of you know, I met Liz back in 1991 when I was first elected to this council here in Horsham, and I formed a very strong friendship which remained close and personal, and on my part extremely valuable. She was a fountain of knowledge, she was very helpful, she gave good advice and lots of encouragement, and I can remember well her and Councillor Jean Burnham and Councillor Barbara Palmer telling me, as the new girl on the block, sit and listen and don't speak at any meetings till you've been there a year. As you probably know, I've made up for it ever since. I was Liz's vice chairman in 2000, and then when she became the first leader of Horsham Council in 2001 under the new cabinet system, I was chairman of the council in that year. Although we sometimes disagreed on policies, it never affected our personal relationship. As Councillor Boffey said, Liz was also a long-term representative of this council on GATCOM. I'm a member of the Passenger Advisory Group, which is a subcommittee of GATCOM, and our paths often crossed at Gatwick Airport meetings. I also know that she worked very hard on the New Horizons Appeal Committee in aid of St Catherine's Hospice for more than 25 years. She also organised the Golf Days, which raised lots of funds for St Catherine's Hospice. Although we sometimes disagreed, she would always listen, and as everybody knows, she was very fair. I'm very sad she's passed away, and her loss will prove to be immeasurable to myself and the many other people to whom she was loved and admired for her integrity, stamina and dedication to our district, and her unfailing warmth and welcome over many years. Liz is irreplaceable in my opinion. I know many will miss her. Thank you very much, Chairman.
Thank you for those very kind and moving words. Councillor Finnegan.
Thank you, Chairman. I'd known Liz for about 9 years as my ward councillor in Colgate. I asked other fellow parish councillors what they would remember Liz for, and they said she was always approachable and supportive, and that her wisdom and vast knowledge of local government would be really greatly missed. You only have to look at the many messages of condolence from residents to see how well liked and admired she was. So many people mentioned that she worked tirelessly for her community. She was a voice of clarity and common sense, supporting local businesses, especially in her home village of Rusper. Most of all, people mentioned her wonderful sense of humour and community spirit. I remember Councillor Kitchen for her ability to turn up to a meeting without any notes and have all the information she needed front of mind in incredible detail. She was so sharp-minded. What Liz didn't know about Gatwick Airport wasn't worth knowing. I was really touched a few years ago when she found out my son was in a play in Chichester Theatre, and she went along to that play to watch him and subsequently always asked about him and how he was growing up. On the day she died, I had a note in my diary to offer her a lift to the parish council that meeting that evening. She was so desperately still wanted to attend meetings. I will most miss her for her cheeky, knowing laugh. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. And then Councillor Hogden, would you like to make the closing remarks?
Thank you, Chairman. So much has been said. Liz's tireless efforts have significantly contributed to the betterment of our community. Rusper, obviously, ward in particular. Social media posts, I don't think I've ever seen so many posts on social media and comments from the public. I've received numerous emails and letters as well that we've forwarded on. Liz's funeral, I believe, might be a private family affair. I suspect the Rusper Church wouldn't be big enough for her friends, families, colleagues. You've heard tonight about the number of groups, committees, charities that she sat on. So I'm sure more details will come out later, but as I said, I fear Rusper Church may not be big enough. Liz also was a founding member of the Sussex High Weald Advisory Group. She had a superpower. The superpower of a councillor is to get people around the table and collaborate, and that's what Liz did. One of my fondest memories of Liz was she offered to be leader of our group, and this was only a few years ago. And her comments in a speech to the rest of her Conservative colleagues were, well, if President Biden can run the country, I can run the Horsham Conservative group. So I thought it was despite difficulties getting to meeting and some obvious discomfort, Liz insisted on joining to the end. She joined almost all online meetings. I believe we saw her in November, December, and performed her duties to the very end. She was a great mentor, will be deeply missed by the residents of her ward, colleagues and district councillors alike. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you so much, and thank you to you all for your wonderful...
Chairman, I did have my name
sorry.
on the list to speak.
Oh, do you wish to speak?
Well, you've got it on the list. You had it on the list.
Do you wish to speak, Councillor?
Hmm?
You don't wish to speak, Councillor?
Well, I would like
Please
to.
do.
Yeah. Sorry about that. But I did think long and hard about this, and most of what has been said, obviously, has been said by the previous speakers. Just a couple of thoughts about this. I was elected in 2007 at the same time as Philip Circus. I never got into the cabinet. I spent most of my time sitting in opposition, watching it all happen from the back benches. But I remember that when I first walked into the council chamber over the road, I came across lots of august members. In fact, it was quite daunting for someone new to turn up at Horsham District Council. And Liz particularly filled me with awe because she'd done everything by the time I got to the council, being leader, chairman, cabinet member. So I spent my year, and I did take a year, watching her, observing, and trying to learn from her manner. And I realised she was the least pretentious of people. I watched her at planning committees. She listened to the arguments that were made. She spoke particularly about her ward applications, but above all she was incredibly honest about what she felt of those applications, and quite frankly that filled me with awe, because many of us don't quite speak what we feel at a planning application, but she was unafraid. She had an honesty about her. She didn't rush to the microphone at council meetings. She listened, and if she contributed, she didn't speak for a long time. Inevitably it was common sense, and inevitably it was concise, and she always did it with a slight smile, and her smile was something that I remember quite frequently. We've heard about her golf, about the St Catherine's Hospice, representative of GATCOM, but I think what struck me most was the courage that she had when faced with a physical illness which was going to end in one way only. And I remember her here at our last council meeting in her chair, determined to be here, and she had that smile, and that really made her, to me, a very special councillor. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. A wonderful lady who we will all miss greatly. I now move to the leaders' announcements.
No announcements from me, Chairman.
Thank you. Cabinet members' announcements. Councillor Bainham.
Thank you, Chairman. Now, after all those moving tributes we just heard, I'm afraid I'm going to talk about audit. You may recall that at Council in December, I mentioned that having just signed off the 2022-23 Statement of Accounts, officers and external auditors were on track to finalise the audit of the 2023-24 Statement of Accounts before the end of February 25 backlog deadline. I'm pleased to be able to update you with the news that this was indeed the case, and that Audit Committee approved the 23-24 accounts on Wednesday last week, and the auditors signed the audit off, signed their audit opinion on Friday. As the auditors did not have the capacity to perform a full audit in 22-23 due to the national backlog, they are building up their assurance over the next couple of years. So it is again a disclaimed opinion, but this time on the opening balances. It will take a further 2 years to work through the full assurance, with 26-27 being the first clean opinion, which is in line with the national timetable for all authorities affected in this way. The auditor also undertook work on the value for money conclusion, and no significant weaknesses were identified in this area. I would again like Council to recognise the important work that the Audit Committee Chairman, Councillor Livingston, together with all the members of his committee, have done in this area. And furthermore, I would also like to thank the officers and the finance team for the hard work that they put in for this, ably led by the Head of Finance, Samantha Wilson. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Councillor Blackburn.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm very pleased to announce that Horsham District Council has adopted a declaration for river recovery. It is the result of a notice of motion brought by Councillor Beard in December 2023 and carried by Council with the express intention of providing collaborative support for river recovery action throughout the district. The collaborative aspect is important, as no one organisation or group can possibly, on its own, reverse the damage done to our waterways over recent decades. It is a task that requires focus from local authorities, environmental agencies and groups, businesses, landowners and local communities. The organisations involved in the declaration were Arran District Council, Ada and Worthing Councils, the South Downs National Park, the Ouse and Ada Rivers Trust, the Western Sussex Rivers Trust, and the Net Land Foundation. It includes specified actions to achieve healthy rivers and covers water quality, flooding and drought, water efficiency, the enabling of more naturally flowing rivers, the swapping of man-made interventions for nature-based engineering, and of course the increase of biodiversity. It emphasises the need for a catchment approach over wider geographies, and it also acknowledges that long-term solutions are needed as there are no quick fixes. The declaration will be sent to parish and neighbourhood councils and local environmental groups to encourage them to adopt or support it, and to provide them with referencing for their own river recovery initiatives in order to promote greater cohesion across the district. It will additionally be used as a springboard to inspire communities to understand and appreciate their local rivers. And finally, it demonstrates the Council's commitment to build on the work it is already doing with others to act on this important issue. Aligned with the adoption of the declaration, we were pleased last week to provide an all-member briefing from our two local rivers trusts. The presentations were given by Pete King, Director of the Ouse and Ada Rivers Trust, and Amy Fellis, Chief Executive of the Western Sussex Rivers Trust. Pete and Amy explain the important and wide-ranging work that the organisations lead on to enhance the Arran, Rother and Ada. The work ranges from projects that encourage community involvement and action to removing invasive species and working with landowners to reduce runoff from their land, as well as re-establishing more naturally flowing watercourses. What was truly inspiring was learning how quickly watercourses can recover when they are given the chance, along with the knock-on positive effect this has for wildlife. A lovely example came from a landowner who created a series of ponds to reduce the flow of water into a nearby river. Within a few months, the amount of water and soil runoff from the land had reduced and new habitats were formed. Prior to the works, the farmer had recorded 3 lapwings on his land, but in the year following the works counted 75. The other essential role of the Rivers Trust is to bring together a range of organisations with a responsibility for or which impact on the rivers. These are known as the catchment partnerships, which I mentioned earlier. It is only through collaboration that the issues facing rivers can be addressed, and Horsham District Council is proactively working with both of the Rivers Trusts and is a member of both catchment partnerships. Thank you to all here who attended the presentations last week. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Colette. Any other? Chief Executive, do you have any announcements? Thank you. Moving on to item 6, questions from the public. There have been no questions from the public received. I now move on to, the intention is, I would like to reorder the agenda. I would like to propose that we reorder the agenda as follows. First, we consider the Independent Remuneration Panel's report, being agenda item 9, to prevent the panel from waiting until the end of this meeting, which undoubtedly will go on for quite some hours. Secondly, we consider the budget, item 6, and third, we consider the council tax resolution, item 8, as this item is intrinsically linked to the budget. We will then return to the agenda and deal with the remaining items as laid out. Do I have a seconder to this? Thank you. I trust we're all in agreement and nobody wishes to speak. Agreed. Thank you. The motion is carried. I now move to agenda item 9, the report on the IRP. In relation to agenda item 9 and the report of the IRP, I will separate out this vote as some councillors have an interest in relation to the payment of the honorarium, and this will allow those councillors to take part in the debate related to the remaining recommendations of this report. Therefore, the recommendations will be introduced, proposed, and seconded in the usual way in relation to all of the recommendations within this report. Then we will debate recommendation 4 on page 53 in relation to the in the honorarium first. Members will, with interest, will, when invited, leave the room and return for the remaining recommendations. I hope you all followed that. I invite the Chief Executive, Jane Eaton, to introduce this item.
Thank you, Chairman. We're instructed again.
Thank you. Is there a proposal for this motion in relation to the recommendation?
There is, but I think we have a presentation first, do we? Am I right?
Yeah, yes.
Yes. Sorry. Apologies.
Mr. Ludley.
Please.
Thank you, members, Chair, for inviting myself and my colleagues here tonight. We established this review in September last year, taking into account the terms of reference set for us, which you will see in the report. But we did try to look at our report being evidence-based, taking into account the terms of reference, but also the current position with regard to your scheme of allowances. This was in particular reference to the new areas we were asked to look at, which you will see in the report. We looked at legislation, national guidance, national reports and best practice, as well as the South East Employers Annual Survey, which is across the whole of the South East, looking at all allowances from all authorities. And also we looked specifically at the reports and allowances in district authorities in West Sussex to try and get some comparative data. And of course not forgetting the survey we undertook with yourselves and also interviews. With regard to the proposed new areas, if they're not progressed and not agreed, then we would propose that they, or recommend, that they revert to the current position. This is particularly in reference to minority groups, which we were asked to look at specifically. Lastly, it's your scheme of allowances. You decide on that, having regard to our report. So I present our report to you, and I'm here for any questions. Thank you.
Right, can I ask members if they have any questions before I pass on to Councillor Buffy? Councillor Buffy.
Thank you very much, Chairman, and also thank you very much to Mr. Ladley and for the panel for their work and for coming along this evening. I read all the report and the deliberations with great interest, and I'm sure everyone will have their own views. There's quite a lot of recommendations in there, and overall, whilst I'm as an individual, maybe on one or two items I may have taken a slightly different view. I think that the important thing is to bear in mind that this is an independent review conducted, and I think there is great value in that. I think it's much better that way for this to be done independently, and I would always wish to support that approach, and that being the case, whatever my individual preferences here or there might be, I'm very keen to support the recommendations in full, and would ask members to do likewise. Thank you.
Thank you, Martin. Do we have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Serkis. Do you wish to speak now or later in the debate?
Yes, I'll speak now.
Thank you.
I've always supported the view that allowances should be decided externally by an independent panel. It takes, should take the politics out of it, and that we should implement whatever the panel from an independent stance comes up with. I think that's so much better than the system that used to operate, where councillors went through the unedifying process of deciding themselves directly how much they should be paid in the way of allowances. The only comment I would make is that this is the second time that the allowance for the leader of the opposition has been reduced. And if this happens a third time, I shall really start to get a complex. But leaving that aside, I'm happy to second this and support the recommendations in the report. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Serkis. I'm sure there is no personal reflection of what will I will now open up to the floor to debate only recommendation 4 on page 53 relating to the payment of the honorarium to the IRP. Members, and can those members who made a declaration please leave the room? Thank you, Councillor Vickers and Councillor Olsen. I trust that no members wish to speak to the payment of the honorarium and that the recommendation 4 on page 53 of the agenda is agreed. Please confirm. Thank you so much. Can you please ask them to return? I told you it was going to be like this all evening. I will now open to the floor to debate the remaining recommendations 1 to 3 on page 53 of your agenda. Does anybody wish to speak? Okay. We move to a vote. I will ask Council to approve the recommendations on page 1 to 3 on page 53, excluding the payment of the honorarium. All those in favour, please show. That looks pretty unanimous to me. This motion is passed. All right, we now move to agenda item 6, recommendations from Cabinet, the budget. We now come to the setting of the budget and the council tax. I will shortly be handing over to Councillor Bainham to present the budget item. Then I will allow all party leaders to speak on the budget for up to 10 minutes each, should they wish to do so. As a few of our councillors are broadly trustees of community groups or members of groups which stand to benefit from grant allocations contained in the relevant budget and special expenses item, they will not be able to vote on those parts. In order to allow those members to participate in the remaining items related to the budget, I will separate out the vote on both the grant allocations and the special expenses ahead of the rest of the budget recommendation. Therefore, I will invite those councillors with interests to leave at the appropriate time. Thank you. We will then debate and vote solely on those items. taking each in turn, and return to the remainder of the budget thereafter, which will allow those members to participate, as you have seen. Let's move to the budget then. I will now hand over to Councillor Bainham to introduce the budget and move all the recommendations of the Cabinet. You have a maximum of 5 minutes.
Five, got to take.
Oh, well, up to 10. But if you can do it in 5, it would be preferable.
Thank you. Councillors, at this time last year in this chamber I presented my budget for 2024-25. I described it at the time as a realistic and a prudent budget that would fully support our ambitious council plan. Surprisingly, not everybody agreed with me. Conservative members variously described it as foolhardy, unduly optimistic, overly ambitious, and likely to lead the council into a period of financial difficulty. As it turns out, we will be coming in under budget for the second year running. All services have been maintained, and while our financial position remains challenging, the council is certainly not facing a financial crisis. So such criticisms have proved quite unfounded. This year, I will be proposing a budget not dissimilar in tone and content from last year, so I trust members may be more considered in their comments this time round. But before I present our proposals for the coming year, I would first like to point out an inconsistency in the budget papers before you. The first page, that's page 23, references a 13.3 million capital programme, while recommendation Roman 9 on page 25 mentions a 13.8 million capital programme. The latter figure is correct. This is because an extra £520,000 on the original figure was agreed by Cabinet on the 29th of January to provide new social housing in Cowfold in partnership with Saxon Weald. That doesn't seem to have made it to the front page, but it is in the recommendations, and I apologise for the error. Further to that, I would now like to add an additional 1.844 million to the capital programme. I appreciate that this is rather late in the day, but let me explain. In late December, government invited local authorities to express their interest in increasing their delivery of the Local Authority Housing Fund Round 3 over the course of 25-26. Following discussions at PDAG in January, we expressed an interest in funding for 6 temporary accommodation homes and 2 large resettlement homes. MHCLG, that's the Ministry for Housing, Communities and Local Government, informed us out of the blue only last week that our funding allocation is going to be 832,000 towards 3 temporary accommodation homes and 1 large resettlement home. So half of what we asked for essentially. But they requested confirmation of our acceptance by the 26th of February. That's 2 days' time, so speed is of the essence. Now our contribution to this housing fund will be 1.012 million, which will be funded from reserves. Consequently, I propose to incorporate the additional 1.844 million into the 25-26 capital programme, taking the budget from 13.8 million, as in the papers, to a new total of 15.6 million. This is an amendment to recommendation Roman 9. Do I have Council's agreement to do so? Thank you very much. A full paper will go to the Cabinet meeting on the 26th of February in 2 days' time to formalise the arrangements for the application and delegation of authorisation to the relevant Cabinet members, that's Councillor Raby and myself, for the acquisition should this capital budget increase be approved when we vote on it. Moving on now to the budget proposals. The net revenue budget requirement at £15.8 million is 1.3 million, or 9%, higher than last year, largely due to inflation, salary increases and increased employer national insurance contributions. This compares to what MHCLG describe as a neutral floor funding settlement. In fact, it is less than neutral, given that it assumes a maximum permitted increase in council tax, just 30% compensation for a £500,000 national insurance bill, and no increased bill, and no allowance at all for inflation. This means to balance the budget, we've had to both identify expenditure savings and increase non-council tax revenue. We have done this by finding 0.9 million or £900,000 worth of efficiency savings while maintaining all service delivery, and increasing a number of fees and charges such as those for parking and waste services as previously agreed by council. This means we will also have to increase council tax income by the full amount permissible without referendum, that's 2.99%. However, this is split between a council tax rise, a base council tax rise of 2.7 for all residents, and a special charge rise for the unparished areas of Horsham town in lieu of a parish precept of 9.1%. For a Band D property, this means a council tax rise of £4.67 a year, and in Horsham town, a special charge rise of £3.38 a year. So that's just 39 pence and 28 pence respectively per household per month. The new council tax rates will continue to be the lowest in Sussex and in the bottom quartile nationwide. Meanwhile, the special charge will remain less than half of the average of the Horsham district parish precepts. The report also sets out medium-term financial strategy revenue deficit projections to 29-30, based on current assumptions. This forecasts a £250,000 deficit for 26-27, rising by a further 1.275 million in 27-28. And that takes us to the likely end of Horsham District Council under local government reorganisation. I think it's worth pointing out that when this administration took over in 2023, I found I had inherited from the previous Conservative administration a projected revenue deficit for this period, up to 27-28, of £4 million. Not quite the 22 billion the current government are talking about, but a very significant black hole for a district council nonetheless. I'm pleased to say that due to careful and prudent management of the council's finances over the past 2 years, we've been able to cut this deficit by 2/3. We will continue to work to eliminate it completely over our remaining term of office. Further rises in the deficit are theoretically anticipated for the following years, but this will be overtaken by local government reorganisation. I've already referred to a capital expenditure budget of 15.6 million. This is a significant increase over the trend of previous years and 5 million more than last year. It does not, however, include any potential spending relating to the potential Highwood development. I anticipate coming back to Council mid-year to seek approval for additional capital expenditure on that item. We will also seek opportunities for further spending of Section 106 funds for more social housing. In this context, I note that the Chair of Overview and Scrutiny Committee recently expressed his view at the last meeting of his committee that the capital expenditure budget should be increased from the 13.3 million figure as was in the papers that the committee was considering. We have also received what we assume to be a one-off grant of 2.32 million from Extended Producer Responsibility for Packaging Fund, which is a mouthful, I have to say. In line with what I believe to be the case for all other English district councils and receipts of such a grants, and following the expectations of the Minister of Estate at MHCLG, these funds will be ring-fenced and held in reserve to cover anticipated extra costs of introducing and running the food waste collection service that will commence in March next year. This is a balanced budget that maintains delivery on all our existing services, whether statutory or otherwise, provides much needed support to our most vulnerable residents, and contributes to making our district a great place to live and work. I therefore commend these proposals to councils as detailed on pages 24 to 25, including the revised capital expenditure budget under recommendation 9. But before we move into a general debate, as the chairman has already said, we must consider our proposed grant allocation separately. There is no statutory obligation on the council to provide grants, but there are a host of local charities and community groups who provide valuable support of all types to the community at large. Many could not function without our financial backing, and we believe we have a responsibility, albeit not statutory, to provide the support where we can. So included in this budget is an allocated sum of just under £250,000 to provide such support. The list of grant recipients is listed on page 71 of the January Cabinet Papers. There is also an added sum of £29,036 for in-year applications, taking the total budget to just under £278,000. We have maintained this figure from last year despite our funding challenges, and I hope that councillors will support it. So that's specifically on the grants, but as I said before, I'm recommending all their recommendations.
Thank you, Mark. I will now invite Councillor Philip Serkis, leader of the Conservative Group, to speak. Do we have a seconder to the motion? Thank you, Councillor Buffy. Do you wish to speak now or later?
No, I'll wait. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Apologies. Councillor Serkis.
Thank you, Chairman. We think that this budget represents, well, I can only call a contradictory approach. It almost mirrors, dare I say it, the budget that we had from she who must now be called Rachel from Accounts. That is a budget which, in a way, is what is sometimes described as a curate's egg, which means that it's good in parts, but if it's good in parts, it means also that it's bad in parts. And in particular, we have an administration that claims to be pro-business, claims to stress the importance of supporting local business at a really crucial time for local businesses, with the national insurance hikes that they've got to deal with the cost of living crisis that their customers have got to deal with. This is a time when businesses, the business community, needs particular support. But the policies of this administration don't seem to match the protestation that this is an administration that wants to support business. This is particularly true on the issue of parking charges. You know, there are other communities, presumably subject to the same problems about the same pressures, which manage to be much more encouraging to local businesses. If I can give the example, just one example that struck me hugely in a visit over the Christmas period, and that's Billericay in Essex. Billericay, they abandoned charging in all their car parks from the 22nd of December through to the 6th of January. Throughout that period, car parking in Billericay was free. And they also, on a Saturday, they don't charge on a Sunday, and on a Saturday they'll charge up to 9 o'clock. And that's to stop people using it as a station. It's essentially an extension of the station car park, but thereafter, on a Saturday, free. So you see, and in West Sussex we have plenty of examples where parking is much less onerous in terms of charges charging. There is a real attempt in parking charging to give encouragement to local businesses. We think that this administration takes taxing people, seems to, I won't say relish taxing people, but is certainly carefree in terms of taxing people, because as Councillor Bainham has said, that the council is going, we're being asked to agree the highest council tax increase that the law allows us to do. We have green waste charges that have gone up in excess of inflation, and of course increases in the charge for the unparished areas of Horsham. Good in parts. We cannot say it's a completely bad budget, but as with the curate's egg, it's good in parts but also bad in parts. And because it's bad in parts, my colleagues are going to put forward amendments on 2 items. They are mentioned on the order paper for us to debate more specifically in due time. But that's all I wanted to say, Chairman, by way of introduction. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Serkis. I now invite Councillor Mike Croker, leader of the Green Group, to speak. Councillor Croker, you have a maximum of 10 minutes.
Thank you, Chair. You'll be pleased to hear that I won't be talking about car parks at this part of the evening. As some of us will have noted, thanks to the ongoing local government reorganisation, we now live in what might be called interesting times, and our expenditure plans should reflect that. Given the pace of recent announcements, though, it's perhaps understandable that our current budget proposals do not fully reflect all possible options. But I consider that it is time for some additional creativity to benefit our district's residents as they cope with the extended fallout of the austerity decade's assault on public goods and the COVID pandemic. I do note that the Cabinet Member has introduced a few items in his earlier speech. In particular, the Green Group would like to investigate using better leverage of local members' knowledge when awarding small grants to community groups, as well as some acceleration of the capital programme in light of the delay to the Capitol regeneration project. Housing net carbon zero and general efficiency programmes are good examples, I think. However, any such expenditure must consider the ongoing climate and nature crisis, both in terms of reducing this district's contribution to them and in increasing resilience to the changes that are already in play and locked in for the foreseeable future. In terms of resilience, I would refer to the multiple benefits of our district's green spaces, from providing nature corridors and flood channels to open spaces for mental regeneration. And do we need the latter? According to the NHS, 1 in 5 of 8 to 16-year-olds probably have a mental health disorder. 1 in 5. It is vital that these green spaces are protected from central government's reorganisation and growth plans. In summary, the Green Group look forward to working with the administration on plan revisions and enhancements over the next year in response to what is both an opportunity and an existential threat. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you so much, Councillor Croker. I will invite Councillor Boffey, leader of the Liberal Democrat Group, to speak. Councillor Boffey, you have a maximum of 10 minutes.
Thank you very much, Chairman. I'd like to start by thanking Councillor Bainham, and also Director of Resources Dominic Bradley, and Head of Finance Sam Wilson, and all the other staff who've contributed to putting the budget together. It's a considerable piece of work, and obviously all the heads of service and team leaders have to feed in and take part in that exercise as well, so it's a considerable piece of work. And once again, the officers have done it excellently, and Mark has brought us again a prudent, sensible, measured budget that supports our ambitions. Unsurprisingly, I don't share Councillor Serkis's assessment of it. Do we support our business here? Yes, we are supportive of our business community, and that's why we've worked closely with the Horsham Business Initiative to bring forward the Business Improvement District, and work closely with them on a regular basis to find out how we can support businesses in this area, and then follow through on those initiatives. Examples of that would be, when it comes to car parking, introducing reduced price, further reductions in the carnet price for parking in the town, so that business owners and staff can access parking at a cheaper rate to help support them in that way. Nobody likes putting up charges for things, including car parking, but these things have to be weighed in the balance of what we can, do we put up certain charges, do we cut other things? And in arriving at that, you have to look at the circumstances in the ground and see where you're actually at as a local economy. And what I notice when I look around Horsham is nearly all of the shops are occupied and are operating. You go out on just about any day of the week and it's bustling and busy. Now, you probably won't just take my word for that, but I mean, I've had visitors just in the last few weeks. We've had peer group come from another council, come to work with us for a day. On a Monday night, they said, "Oh, we went out to such and such for dinner in Horsham on Monday night." I'm amazed how much choice we had for somewhere to go. Most other places you go, everything's shut. Another occasion, I met another group of councillors for an evening meeting. We had dinner together to discuss certain things, and they hadn't been to Horsham before, but they said, "Oh, yeah, no, we got here. We parked in Pirry's Place." This was a Wednesday night, mind you. We had to get up to the 3rd floor to actually find somewhere to park. So I think this is something to be celebrated in terms of how well our local economy is performing in difficult times, and obviously no one wants to hamper that, but you have to weigh different decisions about what you can do and what you can't do to actually deliver the best for everybody overall. Green waste charges, yeah, they have gone up another £5 this year, but we're still way lower than all of the councils around us in terms of green waste. So then, the question is, well, if we benchmark things, should we be charging a little bit more for this so that we can continue to provide excellent services for people, or should we make cuts because we don't want to put the green waste bins up by another £5? Bearing in mind also that both car parking and green waste are choices as to whether you avail yourself of these things or not. They are not compulsory items that one actually has to have. Otherwise, they're not in the council tax. They're choices that one makes. So I listen with interest to these arguments and take them all into account, but on balance I think we're taking the right approach, and believe we should continue to do so. I think I'll listen to Councillor Croker's suggestions. I think using more local knowledge when it comes to small grants, that sounds like an interesting idea to me, because much as people might accuse me of it, I don't think we have a monopoly on good ideas, and I think we should be using all of the knowledge of everyone in the council to try and do the best that we can. So that seems sensible. I understand where he's coming from when it comes to accelerating the capital programme. I think there's a tricky balance there, because some members will remember the proportion of the capital programme that we actually tend to manage to deliver year on year, and I think we're doing a much better job these days of actually delivering a high proportion of the capital programme. So there is a balance to be struck between, being selfish about it, not setting yourself up to fail, versus making sure you're being ambitious about what you deliver. But I think there's good intent around the council, I believe, to try and deliver as much as we can in the coming years. So I'll take that on board. But I think when it comes to we'll talk about the council tax in a moment, but the thing I think about with this council, I'm incredibly proud, as we all should be, of everything this council does and of the services it provides. And I'm looking at the Band D precept number proposed for this year, £174.95 a year for a Band D house in this district. For that, you get your bins emptied reliably with one of the highest recycling rates there is around. We provide housing for people at the point of need when they come to us in hard times. We're providing 100% council tax relief now for those who are the most vulnerable. We're looking after large amounts of award-winning green spaces in this district. I could go on, but I shouldn't. I'll just say we understand that times are difficult for many people. We understand that we shouldn't be adding to their burdens unnecessarily, but I don't believe we are doing. And I think £174.95 a year for all that is a damn good deal. Thank you.
Thank you, Martin. As mentioned, we will now debate and vote only on the grant allocation contained in the revenue budget at recommendation 2 on page 24. Therefore, can those councillors with an interest please leave the room? Thank you, Councillor. I will now open up the floor to debate only the grant allocation, nothing else. Nobody wish to speak? I'm now invite Councillor Buffy, a seconder of the motion, to speak on the grant allocations.
They all seem like good causes to me, and I'd like to support them.
Thank you. Do you wish to make any further comments?
I think it looks like we have agreement in this room, so I suggest we go to vote.
Okay. I now ask the Council to vote on the grant allocations contained in the revenue budget at recommendation 2 on page 24 of the agenda. Please wait a second, as Democratic Service will take a recorded vote, and please can I remind members to turn on their microphones when casting their votes.
Councillor Sam Bateman. For. Councillor Mark Bainham.
For.
Councillor Tony Bevis.
For.
Councillor Colette Blackburn.
For.
Councillor Martin Buffy.
For.
Councillor Peter Vanderborg.
For.
Councillor James Brooks.
For.
Councillor Philip Circus.
Agreed.
Councillor Mike Croker. Councillor Joy Dennis. Councillor Len Ennis-Brown. Councillor Nigel Emery.
For.
Councillor Victoria Finnegan. For. Councillor Claudia Fisher.
For.
Councillor Ruth Fletcher.
For.
Councillor Chris Frank. Councillor Anthony Frankland.
For.
Councillor Nick Grant.
For.
Councillor Joan Greck.
For.
Councillor Tony Hogben.
For.
Councillor Joanne Knowles.
For.
Councillor Richard Landier.
4.
Councillor Dennis Livingstone.
4.
Councillor Nicholas Marks.
4.
Councillor Jay Mercer.
4.
Councillor Colin Minto.
4.
Councillor John Olsen.
4.
Councillor Sam Raby.
4.
Councillor David Skip.
4.
Councillor Cheryl Sweeney.
Agreed.
Councillor Jonathan Taylor.
4.
Councillor John Trollope.
4.
Councillor Clive Trott.
4.
Councillor Claire Vickers.
4.
Councillor Belinda Walters.
4.
That was 35-4, unanimous.
Thank you. The motion is carried. Can I please, could somebody please invite the members back in? Thank you and welcome back. We've concluded the vote on the grant allocations and will now proceed to debate and vote next the special expenses item at recommendation 8 on page 25 of the agenda. Therefore, I invite those councillors with any interest to leave, and I will open up the floor to debate on the special expenses. Thank you. Councillor Hobden, do you wish to?
Sorry,
Is there
Chairman.
amendment at this stage?
Are we talking about my agenda item 6 recommendation?
Yeah, the amendment on the special expenses.
Thank you, Chairman. I took the liberty of forwarding the proposed amendment, so everyone should have a copy, and it was printed in advance on the budget papers. The special charge for Horsham Town Centre, the Conservatives, when we've been in administration, have historically charged the same rate across the district. And you'll see from the recommendation that I've made, my group, or certainly I believe, it's discriminatory against the town centre. To be increasing it disproportionately to the rest of the district is not something this council has previously done. I actually felt that the charge may go down this year. I thought it was with the drill hall special charge being removed last year. This charge was increased massively, 35% last year, to pay for the drill hall. So I was flabbergasted when I saw that the plan was to increase this charge again. I listened to the Overunion Scrutiny Committee, and I listened to Councillor Bainham's reply to Councillor Clark, so I can predict what he's going to say, and I perhaps will answer some of it now. It is unfair. I would agree that the district should pay for extra facilities in the town centre, but the items on the special charge, many of them are district-wide facilities. The floral displays, the Horsham Park, Christmas lights, many of these particular facilities are district-wide, and I could argue strongly the other way that they shouldn't be particularly paid for disproportionately by residents of the town centre. I'm not proposing to cut any of those particular items. They could be funded from several different grants. The environmental infrastructure and reserve that we set up for decarbonisation could actually pay for a few of these items. So it is my belief, as I'm hoping that the people in the room will support me, that it's disproportionate, it's unfair on the town residents. Turkeys don't vote for Christmas. I think if you asked 100 residents in the town centre, do they support the charge? I suspect the answer would be no. That said, I am aware, and I'm sure the Cabinet member will mention it, that the Town Centre Committee voted in favour of it. All I would say is that Councillor Sweeney it was her first week on the council. I don't think she was invited to that meeting or was unaware that she could attend that meeting. So we as a group weren't represented on that particular committee, which was I'm sure Councillor Sweeney would do a good job representing us going forward. So thank you, Chair. I think that's about everything that I wanted to say on that particular item. But I'm happy to come back and comment at the end of the debate.
Thank you, Tony. Do you have a seconder? Thank you. Richard, do you wish to speak now or later?
I'll speak later, thank you.
Thank you. I will now open the floor to debate on the amendment only, and please can we limit the debate just to the amendment we will be speaking more broadly on the overall budget later. So if we can have a focused debate just on this amendment. Councillor Grant.
Thank you, Chair. Just for my clarifications when I've been reading the amendment, if Councillor Hockman could clarify the amount in real terms that we're discussing for the unparished area. For my simplistic outlook, it looks like we're talking about a sum of £2 a household a year difference, but maybe Councillor could explain that in better detail, because I'm sure I must be wrong.
I believe it's clearly printed on the front. The recommendation that I'm making is £1.15 charge to 3.11%. This is opposed to £3.38 increase, which is currently presented at 9.08%. So the council is currently recommendation from Cabinet is to recommend 3 times the level of current inflation, which I consider to be personally unacceptable, my group considers to be unacceptable, and is something that other than last year this council have never done and never supported. So yes, it is a small amount when you put it in monetary terms. The cost of £3.38 versus £1.15.
Thank you.
Thank you. I speak mostly as the chair of the Unparished Area Committee here, which was set up, and to quote, to provide a formal forum for conversation and dialogue in relation to the special charge, as was explained by my good colleague Councillor Brooks from the Governance Committee when that group was constituted in July 24. The committee was grounded in recommendations from local government review, recommendation 6, I believe. And at that July meeting, there was no real opposition to the remit of the committee, if I recall. There were a handful of abstentions. And I note later in that meeting, the leader of the opposition stated, if local democracy means anything, Chairman, it means local decision-making. Therefore, I'm confused by this intervention by Councillor Hogman, the councillor for Colgate and Rusper, seconded by Councillor Landerneau, the councillor for Rudwick. Neither wards upon my map reading are located within the unparished area, let alone adjacent. Councillor Hogman claims that the special charge is disproportionate. The issue with this statement is the disproportionate starting base for that assessment. The special charge, when introduced, as ever since, has been out of alignment with the precept regimes of the parish councils, both of which are designed to pay for the services in their respective localities. I believe the Christmas lights are in the unparished area, as well as most of the floral displays, at a rate decided by local councillors. The special charge has been set in this budget as £40.59 over the year, lower than 29 of the 32 parish precepts, whereas the parish precept in Rusper is £28 higher, £68.80, and it's more than double in Rudwick, £84.05. Precepts go all the way up to £169, just £5 shy of HGC charges for its services. The special charge and its expenditure were discussed at length in 2 meetings of the Unparished Area Committee. The increase was noted, but as were the local projects for expenditure, including an amount for Blueprint, the neighbourhood forum, traffic calming in Horsham town, seeing repeated requests to West Sussex continue to be denied despite local support, and adding to the funds to ensure the Youth Outreach Mobile Hub snack wagon is replaced. No Conservatives, even where recently elected to represent an unparished ward, were at either meeting where the special charge and its expenditure were discussed, agreed, and proposed for this year's budget. Finally, I'm confused as to why the councillor for Colgate and Rusper would like all his Colgate and Rusper residents, and for that matter all those residents outside of Horsham Town's unparished area, to have their share of council tax increased further, an increase which would be 9% higher than the increase proposed by this budget. Are Conservative councillors now asking for their own Horsham District residents to pay more council tax? I'm confused. In short, the recommendations on both how much to raise through the special charge and how to spend it, as agreed by representatives from the Unparished Area Committee, should remain as they are. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Olsen. Is there anybody else wishing to speak? Sorry, Councillor Franklin.
Thank you, Chair. And I speak as a councillor in one of the town wards, and like Councillor Olsen, really, I'm a little bit mystified as why we are spending time really debating this proposed amendment. It did, as Councillor Hogman mentioned, come to ONS few weeks ago, I thought we dealt, and I think it was reasonable for it to be raised in that forum, and the chair raised it, and I felt we dealt with it pretty well at that time. So I'm not really, still, I'm, as I say, mystified as to why it's come here. I'm perhaps repeating a point that although Councillor Hogben says in the amendment that he finds the 9% unacceptable, full stop, he'll be pleased to know he doesn't have to accept it because he doesn't actually live in the town. You, as Councillor Olsen mentioned, are arguing that the rest of the residents of your wards and the rest of the district will have to pay more. That's your proposal. But when I think of the wider context of this, you know, there are councils up and down the country debating, probably this week, very, very significant financial issues and financial challenges that they have. They're facing how to justify to their residents very large increases in council tax at the same time as trying to justify or to reconcile reduction in services and poorer services. So I know in Horsham district we also have financial challenges, and I fully appreciate that residents even in the town will face individual challenges with the cost of living, etc. But I just feel that, you know, spending this time debating the difference between £1.15 a year or £3.38 a year, I think probably it almost reflects actually how well we're doing here, really, and how well things are being run, I would say. So maybe I should perhaps thank Councillor Hogben for bringing this to our attention, really, and highlighting this for us. I think that's probably all I've got to say. Thank you.
I try not to smile. Anybody else? Richard, do you wish to second it?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You'll be pleased to know I'm not going to speak for very long. So the facilities in the town then are only for the people that live in the town, is that right? I don't think so. I come in from Rudwick to use the theatre, I go to the museum occasionally, we go into the park, and so we're using it, and a lot of other people around the area are using it as well. And so if we have to pay for a bit for it, so much. So we have to. But raising anything 3% above inflation in these times, when people are strained with their economy and their budget, I think is wrong. So I would be asking members to vote for this amendment. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. I now extend the right to reply to Councillor Bainham as the move of the original motion to speak on the
Yeah, thank you very much, Chairman. Well, the process for setting the special charge for the unparished area is quite clear, and it's been set out already by Councillor Olsen. The unparished area committee was established with one of its prime responsibilities being to make a recommendation to me on what the level of the charge should be. The committee includes all the local district councillors and the chairs of the 3 neighbourhood councils. They met twice in November and December, as Councillor Olsen has said, to deliberate on this, and concluded with a unanimous recommendation to increase it by £3.38, and included a budget schedule on how the funds raised, approximately £500,000, should be spent. Councillor Hogben has helpfully provided this list in his amendment on page 32 of your papers. The committee's recommendation is advisory, but I would have to have strong grounds indeed if I was to reject it. Now, I don't have those grounds, and indeed, on the contrary, I find the rationale for them very persuasive. In contrast, Councillor Hogben has no democratic mandate from the unparished areas to reject it. Parish precepts in the district will rise, as we mentioned, by an average £5.31 this year. That's 57% higher than the special charge rise. That's the rise, that's not the total amount, that's just the rise. Additionally, at a total of £40.59, the special charge will be less than half the average of the parish precepts. And, you know, it's been mentioned, this is just 28 pence per month per household, not per person, per household. I mean, we're talking pennies, literally pennies. But for Councillor Hogben, this amount is apparently excessive, and he's completely flabbergasted. Well, he's easily flabbergasted, I must say. And he wants to give 18 pence a month back, but at a cost. Scheduled capital works to improve Horsham Park, Park Barn and Tandridge Walk will be delayed by a year under his proposal. Do the residents or their elected representatives agree with him, as he asked them? I imagine he can count on the singular support of Councillor Sweeney, but probably not many other people, being a Den councillor, that is. I mentioned when introducing the substantive motion that Councillor Clark, as Overview and Scrutiny Chair, had urged me to increase capital spending across the board. I'm therefore somewhat confused to see his colleagues proposing and seconding an amendment that's actually calling for cuts to capital expenditure. The messaging is somewhat mixed. I'm also quite baffled by Councillor Hogben's proposal to further increase the base level of council tax for all residents across the district. He is calling for a rise, as has been mentioned, 9% higher than that in the budget. This would mean that all council taxpayers would be subsidising Horsham town residents for the burden of having one of the lowest parish equivalent precepts in the district. And they would also be paying for the capital works that his proposal has already cut. In other words, they would be paying more for precisely nothing. I wish him luck in justifying that to his local residents. Now I hope you councillors that you'll agree with me that this amendment, as well as being without merit, is actually quite ridiculous. I'm unsure of Councillor Hogben's motive in proposing it, but the words political gimmick do come to mind. I therefore also hope that you will join with me in rejecting the amendment and consigning it to the bin where it rightfully belongs.
Thank you, Councillor. I now ask the Council to vote on the amendment by means of a recorded vote. Please can I remind members to turn on their microphones when casting their vote. This is obviously a vote on this amendment. We will then, after this, revert to the substantive.
Against. Councillor Mark Bainham.
Against.
Councillor Tony Bevis. Councillor Colette Blackburn. Councillor Martin Boffey. Councillor Peter Vanderborg. Councillor James Brooks.
Against.
Councillor Philip Circus.
For.
Councillor Mike Croker.
Against.
Councillor Joy Dennis.
For.
Councillor Len Ellis Brown.
Against.
Councillor Nigel Emery.
Against.
Councillor Victoria Finnegan.
Against.
Councillor Claudia Fisher.
Against.
Councillor Chris Frank.
Against.
Councillor Anthony Frankland.
Against.
Councillor Nick Grant.
Against.
Councillor Joan Greck.
Against.
Councillor Tony Hogben. Councillor Joanne Knowles.
Against.
Councillor Lynn Lambert.
For.
Councillor Richard Landier.
For.
Councillor Dennis Livingstone.
Against.
Councillor Nicholas Marks.
Against.
Councillor Jay Mercer.
Against.
Councillor Colin Minto.
Against.
Councillor John Olsen.
Against.
Councillor Jill Perry.
Against.
Councillor Sam Raby.
Against.
Councillor David Skip.
Against.
Councillor Cheryl Sweeney.
For.
Councillor Jonathan Taylor.
Against.
Councillor John Trollope.
Against.
Councillor Clive Trott.
Against.
Councillor Claire Vickers.
For.
Councillor Belinda Walters.
Against.
That's 7 for, 29 against, no abstentions.
Okay, the motion is lost, and therefore we now return to the debate on the original motion on special expenses. I now invite Councillor Boffey, a seconder to the motion, to speak on the special expenses.
Thank you, Chairman. Although I'm not any longer a member of the any of the neighbourhood councils, I was for quite some years, so I'm intimately familiar with this list and some of the more recent items on it as well, and it was really pleasing to know that, you know, we were able to actually listen to some of the initiatives that the neighbourhood councils and people in the community in the area wanted to see come forward. And yes, it's nice to be always listening, learning and improving, so I support this motion wholeheartedly. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Boffey. I now extend the right to reply to Councillor Bainham to speak on the special expenses.
I think, Chairman, I've said all I need to say. Thank you very much.
Okay, we will now move to for the Council to vote on the special expenses contained in Recommendation 8 on page 25. Just to remind you that it is a recorded vote, and can I therefore ask members to turn on their microphones when casting their vote.
Councillor Sam Bateman.
For.
Councillor Mark Bainham.
For.
Councillor Tony Bevis.
For.
Councillor Colette Blackburn.
For.
Councillor Martin Boffey.
For.
Councillor Peter Vanderborg.
For.
Councillor James Brooks.
For.
Councillor Philip Circus. Councillor Mike Croker.
For.
Councillor Joy Dennis. Councillor Len Ennis Brown.
For.
Councillor Nigel Emery.
For.
Councillor Victoria Finnegan. For. Councillor Claudia Fisher.
For.
Councillor Chris Frank.
For.
Councillor Anthony Frankland.
For.
Councillor Nick Grant.
For.
Councillor Joan Greck. Councillor Tony Hogben. Councillor Joanne Knowles. For. Councillor Lynn Lambert.
Abstain.
Councillor Richard Landerye.
Abstain.
Councillor Dennis Livingstone.
For.
Councillor Nicholas Marks.
For.
Councillor Jay Mercer.
For.
Councillor Colin Minto.
For.
Councillor John Olsen.
For.
Councillor Jill Perry.
For.
Councillor Sam Raby.
For.
Councillor David Skip.
For.
Councillor Cheryl Sweeney.
Abstain.
Councillor Jonathan Taylor.
For.
Councillor John Trollope.
For.
Councillor Clive Trott.
For.
Councillor Claire Vickers.
Abstain.
Councillor Belinda Walters.
For.
That's 29 for, none against, 7 abstentions.
The motion is carried. And now, if you could now invite the councillor back into the room. We have now concluded the vote on the special expenses and will now proceed to debate and vote on the remainder of the budget, and I will open up the floor for comments.
Thank you, Chairman. I assume you're referring to my,
yes.
my second amendment of the night. Thank you, everyone. Opening question: is Sussex, is Horsham a Sussex market town? That's my opening question. I think it was a strapline on our website for a number of years. I think it's now been removed, but that's always been my my belief. Our job as councillors is to represent the people of Horsham. I think everyone on the manifesto puts across to be a strong voice for our residents, to ensure they're listened to and the councils in the decision-making process. I wrote down the leaders' comments: listening, learning, and impairing. Listen. Sorry, slip of the tongue. Yes, listen, learning, and improving. Can't read my writing. Some things have changed since October. The council is not necessarily in such a desperate need to raise funds. We have received a funding floor guarantee grant of £3.36 million. We've also received a £2.3 million extended producer responsibility grant, as well as numerous other grants. Information has come to light since our October meeting, which I want to share with the council. Councillor Bainham and the Finance PDAG and Cabinet made their recommendations to Council based on Appendix 2 that went to the Finance PDAG. And this is the number of car parks in our district that we're comparing Horsham to. And Horsham is being compared to Brighton, Chichester, Guildford, Worthing, Tunbridge Wells and Crawley. Now, I personally don't believe that that is a fair comparison. I don't believe that they are Sussex market towns. I don't believe that the census data that we have used to compare our prices to is relevant or correct. I could solve. So let me think back to, and in fact I spoke to the Director of Finance today to ask what the brief was to the heads of service. We were possibly looking at a £900,000 gap in funding, and all the heads of service were tasked with either making reductions or increasing tariffs and making recommendations to Cabinet on how they could do that. So the officer concerned, I'm sure, has done exactly what he was asked of, and he has compared some of the highest parking prices across our district, across the southeast, and compared them to Horsham. As I say, I don't feel personally that it's a fair comparison or set of data that he's going to give. If I was to propose that we put our parking the same as Brighton and we charge £30 a day for our Sunday parking price, I think everyone in the room would say that's absolutely absurd, but I've just raised £1 million. But why is that absurd? Well, because we're not Brighton, we're not a destination town, we don't have 6 times the people. So by answering that question in your own minds, you would all agree that it is unfair to compare us to central London and to Brighton. So what towns is it fair to compare us to? Well, Mid-Sussex. Mid-Sussex charges £1 on Sundays. It was free up until the last year or the year before. And this, unfortunately, was an error on this form, and I'm sure the officer made this error with the best of intentions, but the data that was presented to Cabinet, presented to the Finance PDAG, to the PDAG, that Mid-Sussex has just introduced Sunday parking charges to the car park, so Monday, Saturday charges now apply to Sunday. Unfortunately, that was an error, and the Cabinet and the Cabinet member have made its decision based on the fact that Mid-Sussex market towns, which are East Grinstead, Burgess Hill and Hayward, very similar sized towns, are now charging the same rates as the rest of the week, and they're not. They're £1. Mole Valley, Leatherhead and Dorking, free parking on a Sunday. Waverley District Council, Cranley, my colleague Councillor Landview in his ward tells me that on a Sunday customers go over to Cranley for free parking. Reigate and Banstead, £1.10. So the comparative data that we've used on our finance PDAG, I don't believe is correct. I believe that the parking charges will harm the local economy, and hence why at the October meeting I asked us to refer this back to the PDAG for further consideration. The motion wasn't accepted, it wasn't debated, and I believe that Cabinet have made an incorrect decision based on unfair census data, unfair comparisons with other local towns, and I believe that if we put these charges through, it will damage the local economy. There's a phrase, it says you can pluck the goose until it hisses. It's a bit of an old, antiquated phrase when it comes to accounts, but you can keep increasing parking charges till the public revolts. And we have seen a lot of bad press for Horsham Council on the BBC, Daily Mail 2 weeks ago, stating that Horsham Council price charges within the top 10% in the country. So I think my amendments are fair. It gives us a balanced budget. We have new information that's come to light. We have a new fair comparisons, and I'd very much like the right to reply on this one, Chairman, if that's okay. If there are other questions or comments from the floor, I'd be happy to empty them. But the amendment allows HTC to balance its books, increase Sunday costs with other parking charges, and I hope we can have a constructive debate on this matter. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor. Do you have a seconder?
It's me again, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Richard. Do you wish to speak now or later?
I'll speak later.
Thank you. I will now open the floor to debate, amendment only. Who wishes to speak?
Thank you very much, Chairman. So the proposal is that we take £97,000 from the economic development from enterprising Horsham to subsidise the car parking. Economic development is not a statutory provision, although Horsham District does support it, and we receive ad hoc funding and grant pots. This money comes from the West Sussex Business Rates Pool, and I believe that diverting the £97,000 from enterprising Horsham to subsidise car parking would be short-sighted for several compelling reasons. First, it sacrifices long-term economic growth for a short-term fix. While parking subsidies provide temporary relief, they create no lasting economic infrastructure or skills development. The Enterprising Horsham initiative builds sustainable business capacity, developing skills and create employment opportunity that strengthen the economy for years to come. Secondly, it's particularly ironic that funding would be diverted from the Green Leap programme that helps businesses reduce carbon emissions to only instead subsidise and potentially increase car usage, directly contradicting the Council's own Inspiring Greener Futures priority. Third, these car park subsidies would apply only to Sundays, meaning that Monday to Saturday car park users, the days primarily when businesses and workers use the car parkers, would effectively be subsidising Sunday parkers, who in the main are visitors to the town centre. It's easy to forget that not all our businesses are retail or food and beverages, and this creates a double penalty for the very businesses we aim to support. First, by withdrawing and reducing direct business assistance programmes, and then by using these funds for parking discounts that most businesses and their employees won't benefit from during their operating hours. Finally, I feel it's particularly short-sighted to divert funding when these initiatives generate sustainable town centre footfall by strengthening businesses, enhancing Horsham's visitor appeal, improving service quality, creating collaborative business networks, and building lasting attraction based on quality experiences rather than temporary price incentives. Unlike Sunday parking discounts that only temporarily manipulate behaviour, these programmes enhance what visitors actually experience in the town centre, while simultaneously building resilience against future challenges. This funding, currently allocated to Enterprising Horsham, directly supports critical council priorities for 25-26 and delivers measurable economic benefits across multiple sectors. Diverting these resources would significantly undermine our ability to meet established commitments in our approved council plan, in both building a thriving economy and inspiring greener futures. Which initiatives, I wonder, does the councillor feel do not represent a good investment in our economy? Maybe the 20,000 or 7,000 if we lose the 97 allocated to Green Leap, which provides direct support to local businesses becoming more carbon efficient through dedicated grants, directly fulfilling priority 7 of Inspiring Greener Futures. Or our 45,000 or 16,000 as it would be investment in the business support programme across delivered on our commitment to implement the extended Shares Prosperity Fund programme. Or perhaps the 20,000 or 7,000 under the councillor's amendment dedicated to sector plans development directly fulfills our priority to develop sector specific support focusing on visitor economy and land-based sectors including farming, viticulture, food and drink. Or perhaps our 20,000 down to 7,000 investment in workspace development that supports the promotion of Horsham Enterprise Park and Mowbray as key strategic employment sites. The feasibility study for the Innovation Centre represents a crucial step towards our long-term economic infrastructure. The £10,000 or for 3,500 allocated to the skills group will see a continuation of our successful delivery of jobs fairs, connecting local businesses with job seekers whilst identifying actionable insights through the skills audit. What would the 3,500 get us on that list? I'm surprised that my Conservative colleagues have chosen to suggest that instead of increasing Sunday parking, whilst still being one of the cheaper in the area, we cut the support to economic development in the district. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Anybody else wish to speak? Councillor Brooks.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Just a very small note. I think Councillor Knowles has covered all of the important substantive arguments, but in response to Councillor Hogman's opening question about fair comparatives for a Sussex market town, it didn't give me a great deal of confidence in his evidence base that he would to mention Cranley, a village that describes itself both on its own brown sign off the A281 and on the Visit Surrey website as variously England's or Britain's largest village. Once again, I feel that this is an amendment that has rather more to do with one's party affiliation and rather less to do with any sound or sensibly interrogated evidence base.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Boffin.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Well, you heard it here first, folks. The cabinet, the spokesman from the Conservatives says that Horsham is not a destination town. I disagree. I wholeheartedly disagree. People come from miles around to visit this place because it's brilliant and they love coming here. And you wouldn't catch me saying, oh, it's not a destination town. Another thing that doesn't give me too much confidence in the way this was presented is that, well, if we put this through, well, I'm sorry, it's already been put through. This is already policy that this council has voted on. So what you're actually trying to do in a pretty cat-handed way is try and undo it, right? So I might be a little bit more inclined to pay attention to these sorts of things if I thought that the person putting forward knew what they were talking about. And I don't know. It does baffle me a little bit, really. You know, just constantly going over the same things in the past and rehashing it. You know, let's move forward and think a little bit more about what we're going to do for the future, rather than constantly just looking, you know, retreading the same old arguments. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair, and I'd like to thank Councillor Knowles for her very informed and detailed sort of rationale behind her response to the amendment. But I fear that our colleagues in the party over there probably aren't that interested in rationale and sound judgment. I think they're more interested in really big percentage numbers and not in pounds and pence. Thank you, Chair.
Sam.
I just wanted to make a very brief point about seeing things in the press and in the media. One of the things that I saw about the cost of living was about the rise and the worries for older people losing the winter fuel announcement. We had a local man I saw on there who was saying it was going to really hit him hard, and I do worry because he may want to go and buy a replacement Rolex, and if he does want to buy a replacement Rolex, what I suggest is if this increase in parking on a Sunday is going to hit him hard, he can nip into Sainsbury's, park quickly, rush through to one of the brilliant displays that are full of very expensive watches like Rolexes, and if he wants a replacement for that, lovely gold Rolex, he can get another one and not worry about this parking increase.
Thank you. I now invite Richard, as seconder of the amendment, to speak.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Well, this council is not in financial difficulties, so and things have changed a bit over the last few months since this was first discussed. When it was discussed earlier, or was it November, October, I heard it said that this was a big percentage increase, but on such a small amount. But residents on a tight budget, this isn't like the last item we discussed. This isn't £2 a year. This is a couple of quid every time you go there, which could be 50 times a year. So it's a lot more money to anybody on a tight budget. The other thing that was said was that Sunday is now as busy as Saturday. Well, could that be because lower charges on a Sunday have actually worked and brought people into the town on a Sunday and built up the Sunday economy? Now, this increase could be a potential for reversing that trend and for the local economy. It appears that when we were analysing data, we weren't comparing apples with apples, but apples with oranges. Data from large destination towns such as Brighton and Worthing, and I will accept that Horsham is a destination town. People are coming here, and we want them to keep coming here. So we don't want to dissuade them by high charges. If we're going to compare ourselves with Brighton, we might just well compare ourselves with central London, because Brighton has some of the highest parking charges in the country. Like it or not, we are a rural district reliant on cars for transport, and that means getting customers into our towns and boosting the economy. If we dissuade them because we've started to charge too much, and we're going to are we going to go up again next year and the year after, then we're going to put people off coming. As Councillor Ogden said, in my ward, Rudgwick, people, if they go shopping, they either go to Broadbridge Heath Tesco's, which is free, or they drive into Cranley, which on Sundays is free and is generally cheaper during the week as well. And if you look at Crawley, on Sunday, two of their car parks, the main car parks, one of them is £2.20 for the day, and the other is £2.50 for the day. So, cheaper than us. And we were comparing with them, so I don't know how we came to that figure. The leader says that this is a done deal, but in fact the charges don't come in till the 1st of April, so there's plenty of time for us to have a rethink and change it if we really want to. So I'd ask members to keep Horsham open on Sundays and vote for the amendment. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor. Do you wish to make any further comments? You did mention.
Thank you, Chair.
Like
I will make a very brief
and then
statement,
we'll
and that is
conclude
that
with Councillor Payne.
it was that with Councillor Knowles' way that she wishes to spend the enterprise grant, fully supportive. At the particular time when this amendment was filed, there were unallocated reserves. We have significant reserves in this council. I mentioned the two huge, over £5 million of grants that we've got. As an administration, you have spent a lot of money in the last year. The government has also given us a lot of money in reserves last year, and overall, the council's balance sheet has remained pretty flat considering everything that we've spent. So I don't recognise Councillor Knowles' comments. I think they were all very good and noble causes, and anything to boost the local economy I thoroughly support, but at the time these were unallocated reserves. Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Chairman. Well, as we've heard, last October, after a full and considered debate, this council agreed a revised schedule of parking charge tariffs. The subject was, however, resurrected at the next council meeting in December by means of a question to me from Councillor Sweeney, to which I gave a full and comprehensive response. Notwithstanding that, the subject has been raised yet again by Councillor Hogben, this time, for the third council meeting in a row. I'm wondering whether this is to become a standing item on all future council agendas. But I mean, surely, Mr. Chairman, there comes a time when the Conservative opposition have to learn to accept the democratic decisions of this council. However, since it's before us for a third time, I will address it for a third time. Now, Councillor Hogben, and backed up by Councillor Landau, predicates his amendment on the premise that the financial position has dramatically changed since October, in that government funding has been more generous than we anticipated back then. And while I have never said that our position was desperate, as he alludes in his paper, the funding settlement, as I have already laid out, is no better, as in it is in fact worse than our October assumptions. His comments regarding the extended producer responsibility grant are completely off the mark, because this funding is there to offset future costs of food waste collection, as was said to me directly by the head of finance at the ministry, MHCLG. But moving on, I'm glad to see that if you read this paper, he hasn't said it in his presentation, but if you read the paper, he does in fact agree with increasing Sunday car parking charges to more economically reasonable levels, and that his issue is not about the charges rising, it's about the timing, not the principle. And he's written that in his paper, although I note he hasn't repeated it this evening. But phasing in the increase over a period of up to 4 years still creates a funding gap over that time. Now, his solution is to subsidise this by diverting funds from the business rates pool earmarked for the enterprise budget. Now, of course, my colleague Councillor Knowles has explained that one away fairly comprehensively, I think. But no, it's obvious that no increases to charges are ever likely to be popular, whatever they are, and whatever they're for. But the proposal to continue to subsidise Sunday parking on the grounds that it will improve the local economy is not in fact supported by any evidence. In fact, the contrary is true. The experience of neighbouring councils who have mostly introduced Sunday parking tariffs in alignment with weekday rates, and all those ones, I mean, okay, when I presented this to council, the ones I was quoting was Chichester, Worthing, Guildford, Crawley, Brighton. I mentioned Brighton, but saying I didn't see that as a comparator. So all this talk about Brighton is a complete red herring. And in terms of, I've been fooled by the figures given to me by the officers. That's rubbish as well, because I personally checked all the rates all around. And okay, he's right that Mid Sussex charges a £1 rate for Sunday. They just brought it in, but that's the outlier. And the other place, and also you talked about Burgess Hill, Dorking, Leatherhead. They're not really comparators. They're much smaller places than us. They're not destinations, as we are, which is accepted. Anyway, going back to the evidence on it, the experience of neighbouring councils who have mostly introduced Sunday parking tariffs in alignment with weekday rates is that there's been no discernible significant change in patterns of car park use in any of them, and thus no effect on their respective local economies. I'll also be circulating to members of the Finance PDAG for our April meeting
an assessment of research work on the relationship between parking fees and local economies, which will when you read it, it'll reinforce this position. Now, I've already at 2 previous meetings, council meetings, set out the rationale for increases in charges, but I feel compelled to do so again, because it seems to me that what I've said before hasn't really registered. So, Sundays in Horsham are as busy as most weekdays. I didn't say Saturdays, Councillor Landieu, I said weekdays. And there is no justification to treat them completely differently as we've been doing up to now. However, we have compromised by setting Sunday rates on average at around 50% of the weekday rates. The main competitor towns, which I've just talked about, most of them charge the same on Sundays for parking as weekdays. I mean, Crawley is cheaper, I'll admit, but they charge the same on a Sunday as they do on a Saturday. And the majority of them charge us considerably more. And I won't bring in Brighton, but if you go to all the others, you'll find most of them do. Now, town centre Sunday parking currently runs at a loss and is therefore subsidised by all the district's council taxpayers, whether they use those car parks or not. Now, that's not a fair use of public money. Now, if the rises are reversed, the funding gap will have to be filled from elsewhere. The business rates pool proposal is flawed, as I've already mentioned, and other non-statutory services or support to the community would have to be cut instead. In concluding, I'd just like to address references to, quote, huge increase in car park charges, unquote. That was a headline in one of the papers. The average increase for Sunday car parking will be 80 pence per visit, not a couple of quid, 80 pence per visit based on current usage patterns. So I urge members to keep this in proper perspective, and let's not have this kind of ping pong back and forth for forever and a day. This is a reasonable measure. It is not out of line with what happens elsewhere. In fact, it's very much in line and below the line. And it's something that we've already agreed, so please accept that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. I now ask the Council to vote on the amendment by means of a recorded vote. Please again, can I remind members to turn on their microphones when casting their vote.
Councillor Sam Bateman. Against. Councillor Mark Bainham.
Against.
Councillor Anthony Bevis. Councillor Colette Blackburn. Councillor Martin Boffey. Councillor Peter Vanderborg. Councillor James Brooks. Councillor Philip Circus.
For.
Councillor Mike Croker.
Against.
Councillor Joy Dennis. Councillor Len Ellis Brown.
Against.
Councillor Nigel Emery.
Against.
Councillor Victoria Finnegan.
Against.
Councillor Claudia Fisher. Councillor Ruth Fletcher.
Against.
Councillor Chris Frank.
Against.
Councillor Anthony Frankland.
Reject.
Councillor Nick Grant.
Against.
Councillor Joan Greck.
Against.
Councillor Tony Hogben. Councillor Joanne Knowles.
Against.
Councillor Lynn Lambert. Councillor Richard Landieu.
For.
Councillor Dennis Livingstone.
Against.
Councillor Nicholas Marks.
Against.
Councillor Jay Mercer.
Against.
Councillor Colin Minto.
Against.
Councillor John Olsen.
Against.
Councillor Jill Perry.
Against.
Councillor Sam Raby.
Against.
Councillor David Skip.
Against.
Councillor Cheryl Sweeney.
For.
Councillor Jonathan Taylor. Councillor John Trollope.
Against.
Councillor Clive Trott.
Against.
Councillor Claire Vickers.
For.
Councillor Belinda Walters.
Against.
That's 7 for and 30 against.
Right, the motion is lost. I will now return to the debate of the motion. And I invite Councillor Boffey as the seconder of the motion to speak. The original motion.
Thank you very much, Chairman, and I note that we're returning to the original motion. I think we've had a full and frank debate, and I'm quite happy with the budget recommendations as put forward, so I'm happy to endorse them and move forward to the vote. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Councillor Bainham, do you wish to make any closing comments?
I would just like to respond to Councillor Serkis's initial remarks, where he referred to this budget as a curate's egg, good in parts. Well, we know the two parts he doesn't like. He doesn't like the special charge, and he doesn't like parking. But we've discussed those at length, and the two bits that he doesn't like have been resoundingly supported in debate so far by the majority of this council. And even when it came to voting on the special charge, his group seemed to be a bit in two minds, because they abstained, which I found quite interesting. Anyway, there we go. I've made all the points, I think, in my remarks. I don't think there's anything else to add. So I would just recommend this to council. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I now ask the council to vote en bloc on the recommendations shown on pages 24 and 25 by means of a recorded vote, noting that the grant allocation element in recommendation 2 and the special expenses in recommendation rate 8 have already been dealt with. But can I also remind members once more, as it is a recorded vote, to turn your microphones on. Thank you.
Councillor Sam Bateman. 4. Councillor Mark Bainham.
4.
Councillor Tony Bevis.
4.
Councillor Colette Blackburn. 4. Councillor Martin Buffy.
4.
Councillor Peter Vanderburg.
4.
Councillor James Brooks.
4.
Councillor Philip Serkis.
Abstain.
Councillor Mike Croker.
4.
Councillor Joy Dennis. Councillor Len Ellis Brown.
4.
Councillor Nigel Emery.
4.
Councillor Victoria Finnegan. 4. Councillor Claudia Fisher. 4. Councillor Ruth Fletcher. 4. Councillor Chris Frank.
4.
Councillor Anthony Frankland.
4.
Councillor Nick Grant.
4.
Councillor Joan Greck. 4. Councillor Tony Hogben.
Abstain.
Councillor Joanne Knowles. 4. Councillor Lynn Lambert.
Abstain.
Councillor Richard Landier.
Abstain.
Councillor Dennis Livingstone.
4.
Councillor Nicholas Marks.
4.
Councillor Jay Mercer.
4.
Councillor Colin Minto.
4.
Councillor John Olsen.
4.
Councillor Jill Perry. 4. Councillor Sam Raby.
4.
Councillor David Skip.
4.
Councillor Cheryl Sweeney.
Abstain.
Councillor Jonathan Taylor.
4.
Councillor John Trollope.
4.
Councillor Clive Trott.
4.
Councillor Claire Vickers.
Abstain.
Councillor Belinda Waters.
4.
That's 34 and 7 abstentions, no against.
Thank you. The motion is carried. By approving the recommendations, you have now approved the council's budget for 2025-26. We will now adjourn for 10 minutes for a comfort break. Good evening and welcome back. We now move to agenda item 8, council tax resolution. The council now needs formally to approve the overall council tax for 2025-26, including the county council, police and crime commissioner and parish council precepts. I will separate out this vote as some councillors have an interest in the council tax premium policy at recommendation 7 on page 39, and this will allow those councillors to take part in the debates related to the remaining recommendations of the report. Therefore, I will hand over to Councillor Bainham to introduce this item, and we will first debate and vote on recommendation 7 only in relation to the council tax premium policy. Members with interests will leave the room for the duration of this debate and vote. We will then debate and vote on the remaining recommendations except for council tax premium policy at recommendation 7. I want to hand over to Mark to introduce and move all of the recommendations contained in this report. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Do I have 10 minutes?
5.
Okay, councillors, we've already debated the budget, which includes details of the proposed HDC precept for the council tax for the coming year. However, we are required to pass a formal resolution to set this rate and note the financial calculations which underpin it, hence this agenda item. The resolution also includes the updated council tax premiums policy. Are we discussing that now? But I'm introducing that, yes? Yes. Premiums relating to empty and second homes. This sets the premium on empty properties at 100%, rising to 200% after 5 years and 300% after 10 years. It also sets the premium on second homes at 100%. Of course, the policy includes exceptions for both categories of dwelling, which we have discussed in this chamber on previous occasions. As I've also previously explained, the policy is mainly there to encourage owners to make their properties available for occupation, rather than to be a purely revenue-raising punitive exercise. I understand we are to vote on this policy separately, so I will formally propose adoption of recommendation 7. But as for the remainder of the resolution, after that vote, we will continue with recommendations 1 to 6 and 8, the latter being the council tax discretionary hardship scheme. The base council tax rise, as we've heard several times this evening, is proposed at 2.74% and the special charge at 9.1%. Of course, this was the subject of Councillor Hogburn's earlier amendment, which fell. That amendment proposed a higher council tax rate of 2.99%. But I, for one, am committed to keeping the council tax as low as can be achieved, and therefore recommend to vote for the resolution as detailed on pages 35 to 39 of your papers. I think that's all I need to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Do you have a seconder? Councillor Boffey, do you wish to speak now or later in the debate?
Not at the moment, Chairman.
Thanks. I will now open up the floor to debate council tax premium policy only at recommendation 7 on page 39. Can those members who have declared an interest please leave the room? Thank you, Councillor Fisher. All right, who wishes to speak? Does anybody wish to speak on this motion? Martin, do you wish to make any comments? Not really. No. Mark, anything closer? No. Right.
I think you probably heard enough of me this evening.
You're well within your 5 minutes. I ask Council to approve recommendation 7 in relation to the Council tax premium. This is a recorded vote, which we all know how to behave. Can I just remind people that please, can you quickly turn on and off your mic, because what's happening is it's causing difficulties because people are staying on when the next person's trying to come on, and therefore it's not working properly. So please sharp on your buttons on and off. Thank you. Oh, is it not? Oh, should we just go to a straight? Oh, okay. Should we just go show of hands? Those in favour? No, it's unanimously passed. Thank you. Can we invite Councillor Fisher back in? Pardon? Oh, right. Okay. Thank you, Ruth, for your speedos. Right. Right. There we go. Right. Okay. Right. We will now open up the floor to debate the remaining recommendations on page 35 to 39. Councillor Fletcher has already left the room, so we can continue. I invite Councillor Buffy, a seconded the motion. Do you wish to make anything?
Just that I think this is probably the least fun recommendation that any of us have to vote on, but it's part of the job. So, yeah, let's do it. Thanks.
Mark, do you wish to make any comments?
Do I have another 5 minutes?
Oh, come on. Right, let's move to a vote. This one is definitely recorded. So, Councillor Bateman, would you?
Councillor Sam Bateman.
4.
Councillor Mark Bainham.
4.
Councillor Tony Bevis.
4.
Councillor Colette Blackburn.
4.
Councillor Martin Buffy.
4.
Councillor Peter Vanderborg.
4.
Councillor James Brooks.
4.
Councillor Philip Circus.
Abstain.
Councillor Mike Croker. Councillor Joy Dennis. Did I miss that? Councillor Joy Dennis? Oh, she's left, sorry. Councillor Len Ellis-Brown.
4.
Councillor Nigel Emery.
4.
Councillor Victoria Finnegan. 4. Councillor Claudia Fisher.
4.
Councillor Chris Frank.
4.
Councillor Tony Frankland.
4.
Councillor Nick Grant.
4.
Councillor Joan Greck. 4. Councillor Tony Hogben.
Abstain.
Councillor Joanne Knowles. 4. Councillor Lynn Lambert.
Abstain.
Councillor Richard Landier.
Abstain.
Councillor Dennis Livingstone.
4.
Councillor Nicholas Marks.
4.
Councillor Jay Mercer.
4.
Councillor Colin Minto.
4.
Councillor John Olsen.
4.
Councillor Jill Perry.
4.
Councillor Sam Raby.
4.
Councillor David Skip.
4.
Councillor Jonathan Taylor.
4.
Councillor John Trollope.
4.
Councillor Clive Trott.
4.
Councillor Claire Vickers.
Abstain.
Councillor Belinda Walters.
4.
(29 for, none against, 5 abstentions).
Okay, the motion is carried. By approving the council tax resolution, you have now set the council tax for tax year 24, 25, 26. Can we please invite Councillor Fletcher back to the room as we then move on to item 7. Thank you. We'll now move on to item 7 on the agenda, recommendations from committee, and I will hand over to Councillor Livingstone, Chairman of the Audit Committee, to introduce this report and move the recommendations.
Thank you, Chair. This is definitely the least exciting item on the agenda. The report to the Audit Committee meeting back in November 2024 provided an overview of how capital expenditure, capital financing, treasury and other investment activity contribute to the provision of local public services, and how the associated risks were managed and the implications for future financial sustainability. Treasury investment criteria and limits were unchanged except for the limits for long-term investments that have been increased by £4 million to give more leeway for medium-term investing. The overall strategy was unchanged. The commercial property portfolio was projected to maintain income levels, but risk to income persist, especially in the retail part of the portfolio. The Audit Committee recommendation to Council is to approve the updated capital strategy that will accompany the 2025-26 budget to Council, to approve the Treasury Management Strategy for 2025-26 and the associated limits and specific indicators, including in Section 4 and Appendix B of the report. Finally, to approve the investment strategy for 2025-26 and the associated limits and specific indicators included in Section 4 and Appendix C of the report. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Livingstone. Do you have a seconder? Councillor Waters, do you wish to speak now or later in the debate?
Later, thank you.
Okay, thanks. I'll now open this to the floor. Does anybody wish to speak? No. Jolly good. It's the most interesting item on the agenda for this evening. I assume you don't wish to make any further comments, either of you. Okay. I will now put this to the vote. All those in favour of approving the recommendations on page 33 of the agenda, please show. Okay, unanimously passed. Thank you very much. We'll now move on to item 10, appointment of the parish rep to Standards Committee, agenda item 10. Thank you, Councillor Vickers.
Thank you, Chairman. Members will be aware that the Constitution allows for the inclusion of parish representatives on the Standards Committee to provide advice on parish-related matters. There is a requirement to make such an appointment to this committee owing to the resignation of a previous representative. As such, this report recommends the co-option of Councillor Graham Watkins from the Southwater Parish Council as a parish representative and nominated by Halka. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there a proposal for this motion? Do you wish to speak?
Ever so briefly, just to thank the monitoring officer and the team who can fill this vacancy. I thank HELP for putting forward the nominee. And finally, I want to thank Parish Councillor Graham Watkins. I'd like to say I look forward to working with Councillor Watkins, and actually I don't, as I hope all councillors continue to operate within the Code of Behaviour, recognising their Nolan principles. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Do you have a second? Councillor Waters, do you wish to speak?
I just welcome the addition of this person who's got a lot of experience behind them and will be a useful guide to us as members of the committee.
Thank you so much. I'm assuming nobody wishes to speak on this matter. Okay. I assume no comments from yourselves, Councillor Nelson. Okay. All right, so we will now move to a vote. All those in favour of approving the recommendation, please raise your hands. Okay, unanimously passed. Can you invite Councillor Vickers back into the room? Welcome back. I'm now moving to item 11, the calendar of meetings. I invite Chief Executive Jane Eaton to introduce this item.
Thank you, Chairman. The proposed calendar of meetings is included at page 109 of your papers. The calendar follows a similar programme to that of previous years. However, the Standards Committee will now only meet as required. Members are recommended to approve the calendar of meetings and delegate authority to the monitoring officer to make amendments where required in consultation with the chair or, in their absence, vice chair of the committee. Thank you.
Thank you. Do you have a proposer for this motion? Councillor Boffey, do you wish to speak?
I just support the recommendations, or make the recommendation on the advice of the Chief Executive. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Councillor Serkis, with the seconding motion.
The recommendation, thank you.
Thank you so much. I'm assuming nobody wishes to speak on this matter. Jolly good. Right, so all those in favour of approving the recommendations on page 109 of the agenda, please show. Right, passed unanimously. Right, moving on to section 12, reports of representatives. Are there any members here who represent the council or any outputs wish to make any reports? No? Let's move on then. Right. Moving on now to section 13, members' questions on notice. We have received 3 questions on notice. The time allowed for this item is 30 minutes. If we reach 30 minutes, I will seek your consent to continue. And remind members there is no debate on any of these items. So we will now move to question 1 from Councillor Trott. You have 2 minutes in which to answer.
Thank you, Chair. There have been recent BBC reports regarding 2 councils, West Berks and Waverley, in the south of England, introducing discretionary SIL refund policies for cases where home owners have made mistakes in filling in their paperwork that led to them being charged SIL that they would otherwise have been exempt from paying. For clarification, what is Horsham District Council's position on this issue?
Councillor Fletcher, 2 minutes.
Thank you very much. SIL is charged per metre squared on new development. It's an important source of funding for infrastructure improvements such as schools, roads and community facilities that are needed for the district. Most SIL payments come from larger commercial developments. The current SIL charges for a residential development in Horsham district are £184.56 per square metre, so the sums can be significant, and it's important for applicants to follow the correct process to be able to receive any exemption that is available. The Council is aware of the recent press reports relating to the community infrastructure levy and the approach being taken by Waverley and West Berkshire councils. These councils have introduced or are seeking to introduce new SIL policy for homeowner developments such as extensions, where the homeowner has made what can be expensive mistakes in the required paperwork, to allow them to repay SIL that would not otherwise have been payable except for the mistake. There are other developments such as a resident building themselves a new home that they will live in, where the government's regulations are slightly different and do not have a process to refund payments to these residents if they make an error. The SIL regulations do not allow for any exemption from SIL to be applied automatically by the Council. Every exemption or relief claim must be made by the applicant or landowner before commencement of the development by following the process prescribed by the regulations. The Council has very limited room to act with the discretion that we would like to be able to use, and I have every sympathy with those residents who've unfortunately been caught up by this. The intention of the legislation was that these individuals would be able to gain exemption from this charge. So, I have asked our officers to revisit our SIL processes and SIL enforcement policy to see if there are any areas where we can make improvements that will help our residents while we remain within the framework of the community infrastructure levy legislation. As part of this, we are in touch with Waverley and West Berkshire to understand their new processes and the legal basis for their decision making.
Thank you, Councillor Fletcher. Councillor Trott, do you wish to make a supplementary question?
Thank you, Chair. As most people will be aware, there is a specific case in Den Ward to which this applies. And can I therefore assume that the Cabinet member concerned will continue to look into this with vigour in order to ensure that this specific case can be addressed, if at all possible, with consideration and compassion? And if not, in this specific case, then looked into for the future. Thank you.
Absolutely, it really is our intention to look into this seriously, and if we can rectify something in the past, then we will do so, and if we can change processes for future people so that they're less likely to get caught up in this, then we will do so.
Thank you, Councillor Fletcher. We'll now move on to question 2. Sorry, Councillor Trott, do you wish to make any further comments? Sorry, apologies. Let's move on to question 2. Councillor Perry, you have 2 minutes for your questions on sustainable flood prevention measures.
Thank you very much. At the fascinating presentation on the 18th of February 2025, organised by Councillor Blackburn and Helen Peacock, councillors heard from the Ouse and Ada Rivers Trust and Western Sussex Rivers Trust about key flood risks in Horsham district, including threats to public buildings like St Mary's and Aronside primary schools, as well as local communities. The presentation highlighted how local authorities, developers and residents can take relatively small and low-cost actions in one place that can significantly improve water management and reduce flooding in other parts of the district. Given Horsham District Council's key role in these partnerships and the recent development by this council of the Declaration of River Recovery, will the council commit to strengthening local water management by updating the emerging Horsham District Local Plan to promote further sustainable flood prevention measures? This would provide clear guidance for developers on a whole gamut of ecologically sound drainage measures that this authority would expect to see in development proposals, and would also specify small-scale retrofit options appropriate to householder applications. These urban solutions manage rainfall sustainably, reducing runoff and pollution, and could include rain gardens, swales and leaky water butts, permeable surfaces, green roofs, living walls, sustainable road runoff systems, tree planting and buffer strips.
Thank you, Councillor Perry. Councillor Fletcher, would you have 2 minutes to respond?
Thank you for your question. It was indeed a fascinating presentation, and it was inspiring to hear about the excellent work that the Rivers Trusts are doing in our area. We're all aware of the need for a range of solutions, including nature-based solutions, to tackle and prevent flooding. The work that Horsham has done on the Declaration for River Recovery will enable further collaboration on this with the Rivers Trust and with other organisations whose work touches on water management and flood prevention. The emerging Horsham District Local Plan is currently at examination stage, and so it is in the hands of the examiner. However, it does already include updated policies on the sorts of flood prevention measures you're talking about, although in rather drier policy speak. In particular, the draft plan includes Strategic Policy 10, flooding. This policy includes safeguards such as generally not allowing development in the highest flood risk areas and insisting on robust assessments and mitigations where there's any risk of flooding. It requires development to incorporate the use of sustainable and nature-based drainage systems which minimise any risk of flooding on the site and to ensure that flood risk is not increased elsewhere. It also supports sustainable drainage systems that consider green and blue infrastructure, biodiversity and to contribute to environmental net gain. The plan makes clear that applicants are expected to hold early discussions with the appropriate flood risk management authority on sustainable drainage management or SUDS techniques. Guidance on such matters is available on the West Sussex Council website. As such, the council will, through the planning levers available, seek out all opportunities to strengthen local water management to deliver sustainable flood prevention measures. It is not, however, practical for the local plan to provide detailed guidance on such matters. This is particularly the case given that best practice and technologies available to achieve the objectives over the policy do change over time. There are opportunities we can explore regarding guidance on retrofit options. However, where development is so small in scale that it doesn't need planning permission because it falls under permitted development, we would not be able to set requirements. Nevertheless, we could explore with the Rivers Trusts opportunities to provide information on best practice and examples of what can be achieved.
Thank you, Councillor Fletcher. Councillor Perry, do you wish to raise a supplementary question?
Well, thank you very much for your answer. I understand what you're saying about the local plan, but I'm hoping that we can get some small-scale things which we can encourage local people to use in their lives as well. And I welcome some of the things you were saying about encouraging that as well. As part of this initiative, would you be able to collaborate with local communities, Rivers Trust, well, you are saying that, and developers to create a set of guidelines for local people so that it can go across the district and affect bits in other areas as well?
I think we are looking to be collaborative on this, and I've highlighted that we anticipate that talking to the Rivers Trust is probably a good starting point for that collaboration. I'm not saying that it will be limited to that.
Thank you. Do you wish to make any final statements? No, that's Perry. Thank you so much. I would agree with you. That was a wonderful presentation last week by the Rivers Trust. We'll now move on to question 3 on septic tanks. Councillor Fisher, you have 2 minutes to ask a question about septic tanks.
Thank you, Chair. Following on from Councillor Perry's question, I too attended the Excellent River Trust presentation on the 18th of February. As a septic tank owner myself, I was surprised to learn that septic tanks in rural areas are a large contributor to sewage pollution of rivers in our area. Septic tanks play a crucial role in managing wastewater in rural areas, but when neglected, their impact can be disastrous. Poorly maintained septic tanks are a significant but often overlooked source of river pollution in the UK. Improved awareness amongst property owners is essential in reducing their impact. I've included some details further down in the document of possible environmental impacts with references to relevant research and report that backs this up. I suspect that many septic tank owners are unaware of the pitfalls, so I would like to ask, in order to start to tackle the damaging pollution impacts of poorly maintained septic tanks in our district, will Horsham District Council consider working with partners to run a residents' responsible septic tank awareness campaign via social media, by issuing a press release and by producing an Our District magazine article giving advice on better septic tank maintenance for rural householders, to be based on advice from the Watercress and Winterbourne Septic Smart campaign, which is part of the Hampshire and Isle of Wight Wildlife Trust, and other relevant sources. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Blackburn.
Thank you for your question, Councillor Fisher, and I'm pleased you found the presentation from the both Rivers Trust informative and enjoyable. I too found the information around pollution from septic tank discharge very interesting, and I completely agree that specific communications around the topic would be a useful and important thing to do, not least as it aligns perfectly with our work around reducing pollution and bolstering nature recovery in the district. I do just want to provide a quick fact check to councillors so that the basics of the issue might be clarified. Septic tanks are underground chambers where bacteria safely break down the waste from toilets, baths, showers, sinks and plumbed in domestic appliances such as washing machines and dishwashers. Sludge from solids is formed at the bottom and the liquid goes into a drainage field where it is treated again by bacteria as it soaks into the ground. As such, a well-working septic tank successfully treats the wastewater, and effluent inside the inspection chamber should be clear or pale and odour-free. If the system is not working properly for a number of reasons, including the use of chemicals which upset the bacterial content of the system, say, or if it is waterlogged, raw sewage may be released. There are a couple of important aspects that I need to clarify, and please bear with me while I do so. One is that the pollution of rivers by badly maintained or defective septic tanks mentioned at the Western Sussex Rivers Trust presentation are primarily around discharge into watercourses or wetland, and in particular important chalk streams. Chalk streams are extremely sensitive to pollution, and as such the discharge is very destructive. Hence the watercress and winterbourne Septic Smart campaign by the Hampshire and Isle of Wight Wildlife Trust referenced by Councillor Fisher. However, this is not the case in Horsham district, where most discharge is into the ground onto clay, and therefore does not create a significant pollution risk here. The other essential point to note is that following a change in legislation in 2015, Horsham District Council does not have any regulatory responsibilities in relation to the wider environmental impacts of pollution from septic tanks. The Council's powers are limited to responding to nuisance caused if a septic tank system is not being maintained properly or is defective, resulting in unpleasant odour, for example. Horsham District Council does not have any enforcement powers over discharges from septic tanks. These powers lie with the Environment Agency. Having clarified that, and given the potential impact that poorly maintained septic tanks can have on the environment, the Council is very happy to prepare communications in relation to this issue. We recognise that it is important for septic tank owners to be aware of their responsibilities and to ensure that they are not causing pollution, particularly as many owners do not know about the actions that they should be taking, nor the impact caused by a badly functioning septic tank. We will work alongside other organisations to produce communications to inform in this regard and to direct residents to detailed information. However, just to say that a joint campaign of this sort will be planned from the perspective of achieving optimal results and working back from there to identify methods and media channels, rather than attempting to specify what these should be in advance. In this way, we will aim to achieve the best results. As Councillor Fisher rightly points out, such a campaign fits well with the Declaration for River Recovery and our desire to work with others to reverse the decline in nature across the district. Thank you again for the question. Apologies, Chairman, for running over.
Do you wish to make a supplementary question?
Yeah, just wanted to say thank you very much for that response, Councillor Blackburn, very positive and helpful. Just to point out, maybe in the north of Horsham district there might be a lot of clay, but in the south it's quite sandy soil, and I do know for a fact that there are several septic tanks really close to the River Arun that would be going directly into that watercourse. So I think it's something to look at, and I'd very much look forward to talking about this further and working and creating something that will be very positive for our rivers and for the district. So thank you.
Absolutely, thank you.